Have you ever just watched a kid and wondered what in the world is going on in their head? I mean, really thought about it. It's this place that's both totally familiar and, at the same time, completely alien. We were all there once, so let's try to figure out the rules of that world. It's a question basically everyone has asked. Anyone who spent more than 5 minutes with a kid. Their logic can be just brilliant 1 second and then completely bizarre the next. They're like these little philosophers from another planet trying to figure our world out with a totally different rulebook. So what are those rules? See, Billy's response here, it's not him being a smart aleck. It's perfectly logical from his 9-year-old point of view. To him, you just can't draw something that isn't real. And it's this kind of wrong answer that actually holds the key to understanding how their minds work. To crack this mystery, we're going to follow a roadmap laid out by the legendary psychologist Jean Piaget. First, we'll meet the man himself. Then we'll unpack the basic tools kids use to learn. After that, we're taking a journey through his 4 famous stages of development, all the way from baby to teenager. And finally, we'll see what kind of legacy he's left on how we think about kids today. Okay, so our guide here is Jean Piaget. And you gotta understand, before him, the common thinking was that kids were just miniature, not-so-smart adults, that their minds were just these empty buckets we had to pour knowledge into. Piaget looked at that and said, nope, that's completely wrong. He was one of the first people to actually listen to children's answers, especially the wrong ones, and realize, hey, there's a brilliant logical system at work here. So here's the absolute game changer. Piaget said that children are actively building their own understanding of the world. They are constantly creating and testing their own little theories about how everything works, just like tiny scientists running experiments on reality itself. Every time they play, every mistake they make, that's just more data they're using to build their own mental model of the universe. So if kids are these little scientists, what's in their toolkit? What are they using to conduct all these experiments? Well, Piaget identified a few basic cognitive tools that every single child uses to build their world. The toolkit has 3 main parts. First up, schemas. Just think of these as mental blueprints. A kid has a schema for doggy. 4 legs, it's furry, it barks. Got it. Next, you have assimilation. This is when they see something new, like a poodle that has 4 legs and is furry, and they easily fit it right into their doggy blueprint. Simple. But then comes accommodation. This happens when that same kid sees a cat. It's also got 4 legs and is furry, but it meows. The old doggy blueprint doesn't quite work anymore, so they have to change the blueprint or maybe make a whole new one. And that powerful update, that's accommodation. Here's a perfect example of these tools in action. Okay, so a toddler has a schema for a flying thing, right? It's probably based on birds. So when they see a plane in the sky, they assimilate it into that schema and yell, "Birdie!" But then a parent says, "No, sweetie, that's an airplane." Now their brain has to accommodate this new info, creating a totally new, more detailed blueprint for airplane. This constant dance between fitting things in and changing the blueprints, that's the engine of learning right there. All right, now that we've got the tools, let's see how this all begins, right from the start. From birth to about 2 years old, we are in what's called the sensory motor period. During this time, babies don't really think like we do. They understand the world completely through their senses and their actions. They learn by touching, tasting, seeing, and moving things around. Now, the biggest, most incredible achievement of this whole stage is developing something called object permanence. So for a really young baby, when you hide a toy under a blanket, it hasn't just disappeared. It has literally ceased to exist. This is why Peekaboo is the most mind-blowing game ever. You are actually vanishing and reappearing. And it's also why separation anxiety can be so tough. When a parent leaves the room, the baby's brain processes it like they've just blinked out of existence. But eventually, as they keep touching and tasting and exploring, they make this monumental discovery. They learn that things and people continue to exist even when they can't be seen or heard. Out of sight no longer means out of existence. And this is the absolute foundation for all future thinking. It's the moment the world stops being a chaotic magic show and starts being a stable, predictable place. Okay, now we are entering a really long and dramatic phase, covering what Piaget called the pre-operational and concrete operational stages. This is when language just explodes and kids start to think in symbols. But their thinking has some very clear limitations, and the most famous one is this powerful thing called egocentrism. Now, this is really important. This does not mean that kids are selfish. It's not a personality flaw, it's a cognitive limitation. They literally can't easily understand a point of view that isn't their own. They just assume that what they see, think, and feel is exactly what everyone else sees, thinks, and feels. Piaget showed this perfectly with his classic three-mountain task. So you sit a kid on one side of a model of some mountains, and you put a doll on the other side. Then you ask the kid, what does the doll see? And almost every time, they'll describe what these see from their own chair. They just haven't developed that ability yet to mentally jump into the doll's shoes. This leads us to another famous hurdle from this stage. So imagine this. I show a kid two identical glasses with the exact same amount of water. They agree, yep, they're the same. But then, right in front of their eyes, I pour the water from one of those glasses into a tall, skinny container. And I ask them, which one has more now? A younger, pre-operational kid will point to the tall glass almost every single time. Why? Because their brain is stuck on one dimension, the height. Their thinking is still totally dominated by how things look. But an older kid, one who's moved into the concrete operational stage, can decenter. They can think about height and width at the same time and use logic to realize, hey, wait a minute, nothing was added or taken away. They've finally mastered the principle of conservation. And that brings us to the final stage in Piaget's theory, kicking in around age 11. This is the formal operational stage. And this is where thinking truly takes flight. Thought isn't tied down to concrete physical stuff anymore. Now the adolescent mind can start to wrestle with abstract ideas, hypothetical situations, and the big, beautiful world of what if. And this brings us right back to where we started. Remember Billy, the 9-year-old who just couldn't imagine a person with 3 eyes? He's a concrete thinker. When you ask other 9-year-olds where a third eye might go, they give the same logical, concrete answer. On the forehead, duh. But ask an 11-year-old who's in the formal operational stage, and their abstract brain just lights up. They'll say things like, put it in the palm of your hand so you can see around corners. Their minds are now free to explore a world beyond what simply is. So Piaget gave us this totally revolutionary way to look inside the mind of a child. But, science is always moving forward. So all these years later, how does his theory actually hold up? I mean, was he right about everything? Well, his contributions are just massive. The guy basically created the entire field of cognitive development. His idea that kids are curious, active learners who build their own knowledge, that has completely changed education around the world. He gave us a brilliant and, for the most part, really accurate sequence for how development happens. But modern research has also shown us where he might have missed the mark a bit. We now know that Piaget probably underestimated what kids can do. With some clever new experiments, we've found abilities like object permanence showing up way earlier than he thought. A lot of psychologists today also see development as more of a continuous wave and less like rigid separate stages. And finally, critics point out he didn't focus much on how our social world and culture shape the way we think. But even with those critiques, the single most important takeaway from Piaget's life's work is as powerful as ever. He fundamentally and forever changed how we see children. Thanks to him, we don't see them as passive little jars waiting to be filled up. We see them as they are, active, brilliant architects, building their own minds, one experience at a time. So the next time you hear a kid say something that sounds just wonderfully weird, or you watch them struggle with a problem that seems so simple to you, just pause. Instead of seeing a mistake, maybe you'll see something more. A brilliant little scientist, hard at work, running an experiment and building an entire universe right inside their own head.